Welcome back to She's All Business. I'm Sophia, and this week we're going to have a reflection episode about our guest episode last week. Last week we had Hillary Lebouitz-Schaefer on, who is a co-owner of Lebouitz-Spa. She's a medical esthetician, and she really was talking to us about what it really means to combine the medical side with beauty. Before we dive into the episode last week, I'm going to talk a little bit to you guys about my life and kind of what I've been doing this first month of the new year. So last week was my first week back to school. I have 6 classes right now, so it's kind of a busy schedule for me. I've only ever taken 5, so this is going to be an adjustment for sure. In a couple weeks, I'm going to add a 7th class, which is just like a couple week span. It's like an intensive course, so hopefully those couple weeks aren't super bad, but we will see. It's probably going to be a little bit hectic up until like March time for me. So right now I'm taking 6 classes. So I have classes Monday through Wednesday. I have my creatives and entrepreneurship class. Then I have my studio class as well, twice a week, which basically, if you don't know what studio is, it's basically a making class, and it's like your main making class in like whatever art medium you choose for your major. So it's kind of exploring your major a little deeper and doing some form of art to explore that. And then I have a collab class, which is felting. I've never felted before in my life, and I'm kind of nervous about that. So we'll see how that goes. I have a media toolkit class, which is basically just exploring Adobe Suite. And then I have a research design methods class where we're just researching specific design and learning about different methods on how to research. And that's kind of like the whole bulk of the semester. Finally, I have a writing about the arts class, which is a journalism elective. That's kind of my whole semester span of classes. Then I have another intensive class I'm adding. So it's kind of going to be a busy semester for me, but hopefully it goes well. Getting into the episode from last week, one of the main things that stuck out to me was when Hillary was talking about failure. She said something along the lines of failing and getting back up again is the fastest way to succeed. So I'm not at a point to really talk about failure and success with at least my podcast, which is my own business, my own brand. But I think we can all think about a time where we failed at something or had a feeling of failure. When I was 14, I got my first job at a local ice cream shop in Pennsylvania. Every time I was working, the owner of the shop was there just because if you were younger than 16, you kind of did like the day or early evening shift. So because I was 14, I did the more daylight time, which is when the owner was there to do her work. Almost every time I worked, she was there. Everyone at the shop, other than some of the managers, they were all high school students. It was really ironic because the owner of the shop was not really understanding of the employees' extracurriculars or even high school schedules. It was very like, she obviously had to put her business first, but it was very ironic that all she hired was high school students when she had such an issue dealing with people's schedules. She was flat out so rude to all of us for the most part. I mean, I got to see her a lot of the time just because I was in that like daytime shift, but every time she was just rude, and she made for the environment to be such a toxic place. Also, like this one time I was going out of town, so I requested off. I was going like out of state that weekend, getting a text of the schedule, and they put me on the schedule for like the next day, and I wasn't gonna be around. Like I physically could not be there. I was out of state. And I remember texting them being like, hey, I requested off for this. You put me on the schedule, I will not be there. They're basically like, it's not our problem. You have to figure it out. I texted everybody that was an employee, even like all the managers, to see if they could take this 3-hour shift at an ice cream shop, keep in mind. And nobody could do it. Like not a single person could do it. So I ended up just getting back to them and being like, hey, like unfortunately, like there's no physical way for me to be there. I requested off. I reached out to everybody that works there and nobody can do it. That resulted in my boss at the time having a phone call with my mom, essentially telling my mom about how irresponsible I was and that it was not okay to do that. And it just wasn't my mistake to begin with, and just the way that she treated me and even spoke to my mom was just so not okay. That kind of encompasses like the entire experience that I had working there. It was just so uncomfortable, so toxic. You might not make a mistake or you might make a small mistake and they take it to the extreme, or they act like something is your fault because we're kids and they can take advantage. But even though I experienced this really toxic work environment and like it just wasn't a good time for me, especially at my first job, I was still always respectful to her and all the other managers. But I got to a point where that uncomfortable feeling got to be so bad that I physically never felt comfortable going into work. So lo and behold, I quit after only 3 months, which is crazy that it was that bad by the time I quit. In a way, even though it felt like I was being pushed out by my boss, it felt like I had failed. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to this. I was young. This was my first job ever. And in a way, it felt like I was in the real world a little bit because I wasn't just doing my high school extracurriculars. I was out doing something to hopefully better myself, but also make money and feel like I'm part of this real world. Yet I couldn't really deal with that toxic environment, especially at 14 years old. That is crazy. I also had to convince my parents to start letting me work at such a young age because I couldn't drive. I was 14. I had to rely on my parents to be my transportation, and sometimes my schedule would conflict with theirs, and it was always a real challenge to get me to work. So me really fighting for this and me really wanting to do this for myself caused a little bit of conflict at home. So it was a really big deal to me that I was able to do this, but then I had that feeling like, oh, well, I failed. This is because at first I felt so disappointed in myself because I put so much effort into trying to do this for myself, but yet I just gave up in a sense. That was kind of the feeling I had overall. However, reflecting back a little bit, a few years after that, I started actually working in the real world for my career, and I'm continuing to do that today. And I know now how I don't want to be treated in a workspace, especially by a boss. I'm definitely not saying all of my work experiences have been positive. I've had a lot of negative work experiences, other bosses that were very toxic and rude to not just me, but other subordinates. I never had that same feeling again that I gave up like I did at that first job because I pushed through those negative, toxic experiences that I ended up experiencing later down the road because it made me learn that I know for my future end-all career, I don't want to work for somebody that treats subordinates that way. And I also know if I'm ever in a position to be a boss or an owner, that I wouldn't want to treat my subordinates that way. It's very unfair and it's not a good feeling to have, especially when this could be your livelihood and you still have to push through every day and then having that negative environment surround you. All of this to say, I know this isn't the same type of failure that Hillary was talking about. Hillary was more talking about as a business owner, failing is such a great way to learn to build up for your success. She said like she doesn't trust you to be a good business owner unless you've failed at something. That's kind of what she was talking about. But I feel like because I'm not really a business owner, I can still relate to that feeling of feeling failure, but allowing yourself to take that opportunity as a learning lesson. I learned what I need and what I can't have in a work environment very early on. So in a way, you could say that maybe I succeeded in a life lesson due to that failure I felt. It's the way you look at failure and what you do with that feeling of failure after the fact that really sets you up for success. But failure wasn't the only thing she talked about. That was like one of the main things that really stuck out to me that I thought I could connect with the most. Hillary was really talking about what it is to be a medical esthetician. And before talking with her, I honestly really had no idea. After talking to her, I realized at least at her business, Lebeau, majority of it is more medical based due to her background and kind of having that dermatologist there across the hall. A lot of her clients come to Lebeau due to that medical dermatology type of service. So there's that medical side of things that she's more interested in, but then there's also that more pampering side that she talked about. So being a makeup artist or doing hair or doing nails or even being a masseuse, that's kind of more of the pampering side. We see a lot of this stuff on social media, especially those ASMR facial services, maybe even a massage service. That's kind of the glorified side of it and the more appealing side of it to a lot of people. That's why they put most of that on social media. And not just at Lebeau, I'm just saying in general with these types of spas, that's kind of what you see more in the public eye. But there is so much more to it. But it's also interesting to talk to her about the many different realms within beauty. I never really sat down and thought about how many different niches you can have with beauty. I mean, she has the medical side, there's also the pampering side she talked about, but then there's also like the developmental side of making makeup products or making a perfume, like kind of that scientific side. There's also working within PR and marketing for a beauty brand. So there's like a lot of different things. There's a lot of things that I didn't even mention. And that was really interesting to talk to her about that one side of it. So I reached out to Hillary because I'm from Pennsylvania and I was home on break. So she is from my area and she is so successful. I think it was 1995 she opened. I could be a little off on that year. In the mid 1990s is when estheticians and these med spas started to surface up. So she was one of the first ones, especially in South Central Pennsylvania, which is about 2 hours away from Philly. And she's such a successful, hardworking woman that I thought she would be perfect to have on the show. And it really focuses on the beauty side that we haven't really touched on yet on She's All Business. She talked about an internship opportunity. They mostly do internship opportunities with high school students, which is really great because I feel like so far we haven't done anything pertaining to high school and everything has been about college internships. But the internship that they do is connected with local high schools near Hanover and York that they connect with Lebeau, and they set up this internship program so that high school students can kind of observe and shadow what Hillary does at Lebeau. She also said they do other internship opportunities, but it's very hit or miss just because they don't have a lot of positions open due to the longevity of the workers at Lebeau. She always says to reach out if you're interested. You never know. I would recommend for college students, even if you're not from York and Hanover, Pennsylvania, and you're just kind of near the area, if you're interested in this, she's such a great person to learn from. I would just reach out and maybe see about something over the summer. There would probably be more potential in a college or post-college internship situation in the summertime. I think that'd be more likely. And then also you'd be able to travel from school and you wouldn't have to be at school during that summertime. So you can fully commit to shadowing and learning from Hillary and her team. But overall, I really took away that part about failure is really important because we always view failure as negative. It's really important to take those negative aspects or negative things in our life, like failure, and kind of bring the positive back into it. So it's okay if we fail. Let's learn from that and use that failure as a foundation for us to grow in order to eventually succeed. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this week. I can't believe it's almost February. This January month has gone by so fast. Like I thought we just started the new year the other day. I hope you guys have a great semester up ahead and thank you so much for tuning in and I will see you next week.